Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I just got this idea to do a video just about 20 seconds ago, so I thought I'd do this. And this one is about the idea that a lot of the things that we are debating in the culture war in our modern society themselves are overrated and overhyped to such an extent that I'm like, well, haven't you heard of this? It's almost like metal. It's like, I really like Limp Bizkit. They're so heavy. Well, have you heard Morbid Angel? Or man, Trapped. No, that's not really a good reference. Asking Alexandra. I don't know. I don't know what's popular nowadays. Gent is so heavy. Have you heard Utopia Banished? Have you heard what's that band called? There's a lot of good bands, like from Canada especially. There were a lot of good tech metal bands and stuff. But anyways, I'm not talking about that. It's like the more mainstream Cradle. Oh, Cradle feels so dark. Have you heard any of the Norwegian bands, or have you heard the French bands or whatever? It's like, and it's like with this thing with these people, these controversial media figures or politicians that are like completely overrated from both sides. And I see this happening with people like Jordan Peterson. I'm like, maybe his Jungian work had some merit back in the day, or still does, or whatever, but overall this stuff is just not that like interesting to me. Like I've started reading one of his books. I do own one of his books, Rules for Life or whatever, and I'm just like, I've been into Tony Robbins and Camille Paglia and all sorts of different things, all sorts of different people. And I'm like, just, it doesn't even like come close to any of that stuff, like in any spectacular manner. But it's all propped up, by both sides that are attacking it or that are promoting it. It's almost like this distraction. I just don't understand. So it's another thing that's, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this pretty well placed, is Donald Trump. It's like, oh my God, he's like the Orange Hitler, and then the other side's like, oh, he's the savior of America. It's like, even like people like Six Hexenhammer, who I disagree with on a lot of politics, he doesn't say like he's some kind of Christ-like figure, Trump or something like some of these people say, like, oh my God, he's against the deep state. And it's like, dude, a person that would pick John Bolton or Mike Pompeo in their cabinet is not a friend of the popular, is definitely, is definitely a friend of the neocons to some extent. Now, I'm still going into the psychology of why a lot of neocons are going against Trump. I'm still kind of researching that, looking into it. But, ostensibly giving crumbs to the anti-neocons is not destroying the deep state, So that's just another example. There's all sorts of things. It's like, whether it be Reigns of Power or any kind of, or Ghostbusters 2016, it's like, is it really worth debating these things that are overrated by either side or overemphasized? It's like, it's just stupid, and it's a stupid distraction. Like I said in my Reigns of Power video, Amazon as a company and Jeff Bezos as a individual are far closer to someone like Sauron in the Tolkien mythology than people should realize that this is the case. It's far more important to go against things that are actually harming the world in either way. But it's such a distraction. It's like you'll stand up for this big corporate sludge called the Rings of Power and say it's racist to go against it and all this crap. But then you're ostensibly default defending the actual Sauron, Jeff Bezos. I find that's really foolish and stupid. You should always go against what's important. Talk about what's important in these situations and not what's, this stupid shit. Who cares? Oh yeah, they mess with the mythology and it's stupid. Then ignore it. Then just be like, oh yeah, I don't give a shit. I'll watch Ralph Bakshi's before, and this is the truth. I like the 70s animated Lord of the Rings better than even the Peter Jackson stuff, which I do like, but I do like it better. It always held a special place for me, the Bakshi ones. So that's one thing I should say. But I'm probably just too old to, I don't know. No, I mean, I was prime age for the, I wasn't prime age for the Jackson trilogy, but I wasn't like super young either. So, but it's really stupid. And people talking about this irrelevant shit. It's just like, and just a lot of these things are so mediocre that we're debating. I mean, Trump is mediocre. Jordan Peterson's mediocre. Some of these other, what's his, Andrew, what the hell was his name? That Andrew Manosphere guy. It's like, I was like, it just some of these guys pale in comparison to, it's just like everything's just becoming so degraded and so like mediocre. Like, just these people are not that great in the first place. Like, they're not that, like, I don't mean great, but like astounding, like paradigm shifting. Like, you know, I mean, 20 years ago it was, or not 20 years ago, you know, like 15 plus years ago. I mean, it was like Ross Jeffries, Neil Strauss, you know, people like that, like I talk about. But you're talking about these Manosphere guys now, and they're just these mediocre people that kind of salvaged upon some of the scraps that those other guys left, and they just make it into this stupid sensationalistic thing that's not even that interesting in comparison to the original stuff, which was raising all sorts of questions. Camille Paglia's work on gender is way more interesting than you know, Jordan Peterson's heroic you know, repudiating gender pronouns and stuff. Her work has way more depth to it than anything even Tony Robbins or Richard Bandler or John Grinder's work on NLP is way more interesting than like any kind of self-help stuff from Jordan Peterson or anything like that. I just don't know why all this stuff's so mediocre. Like, it's just like half-ass. Like I started reading his book, Jordan Peterson. I'm just like, this is not that great. It's just recycled, rehashed shit with a veneer of, I don't know, modern whatever, you know. I just thought it was really mediocre. And there's a political bias from the beginning too. So I don't see him as an incel hero. I just see him as like this guy that's overrated. It's just like when you hear a band, you go to see a band, oh, they're so overrated. It's like, why do people like it so much? I just don't understand. Why do people like it? Why do people hate something so much and like focus their attention on it with hate, or like it so much? It's like these two sides, it's this dichotomies of these things, because there's a lot of stuff in history and culture in our reality that's way more interesting and more, you know, I mean, look at I don't know, it's just so dumb. And I guess, you know, you can say like Trump was a big deal because of some of his rhetoric and like taking like that Patrick Buchanan 90s like nationalistic sort of right-wing populist thing to a new level of reality. But as president, he really didn't do that much that was really that interesting compared to predecessors. I mean, he did do some stuff like the Muslim ban, which was pretty crazy. But then, you know, you'll have Biden do something similar to certain things that Trump did. It's like these new norms. There, I say, I hate that word. I hate that term. But of course, you know why. But you know, it's like these things. He didn't really do anything. I mean, and he didn't do anything that was, oh yeah, I made peace with North Korea. Well, what about the Iran deal with Obama and Iran? You know, it's like there's plenty of stuff that Trump did that was just normal. He's just mediocre. It's just another modern mediocre president, just like any of them. On both sides, like as soon as people realize this truth, it's not like he's some kind of right. Then, you know, loses its strength and power. Of the anti-Trump people, I see as just as dangerous as the pro-Trump people, or if not more in some ways, of course, like I've said. But I think the anti-Trump thing blinds them to any semblance of, you know, a lot of their consistency in the past about how they went against certain things, and because it's against Trump, they like it. Just like Liz Cheney, what the hell? 20 years ago, I would have never imagined that a bunch of Democrats would be like propping up a Cheney. It was like the worst person on earth was Dick Cheney. And he literally was probably at the time. I mean, to some extent, the number of people killed in Iraq and surrounding areas, it's just like, and then the number of despots that the Bush administration supported, and just a lot of the stuff they did was awful. And I'd say worse than Trump, at least like actively worse than Trump. Now, some of Trump's rhetoric was worse, but I don't know if the rhetoric would have caused more war or not. It obviously didn't, so we could say that. But just this, propping up these mediocre things from either side, it's just dumb. It's like Jordan Peterson wouldn't have been anything without all the controversy, of course, too, and neither would Trump in a lot of ways. I think Trump had a certain appeal, celebrity appeal, but it'd be like, oh yeah, Trump, ha ha ha, if they wouldn't have propped that up, with this racism thing and all this stuff. And it's just so stupid. It's just so dumb. Like, I just miss the days when we actually had things that were interesting that were controversial, Like, that's my whole point of this video. It's like Emil Palia, her shocking thoughts on feminism and gender and rape and all this stuff, and like, her book is so controversial. She's going to go on Bill Maher's show tonight, and they're going to debate. She's going to debate Naomi Wolf, probably. Yeah, I mean, seriously, Naomi Wolf wasn't a hero of the countercultural right back in the 90s, of course. Because she was helping out Al Gore and Bill Clinton back then. But you would have these things like these debates. Like, I just think these people are these figures are so mediocre compared, and these movements and these ideas are just so blah. It's just so blah. That's what I mean. Like, it's just not exciting. Like, at least the alt-right had like actual Nazis like in there. Like, that would have made it a little more interesting. Like, oh my God, there's Nazis in the alt-right, or whatever. But now this like new thing, since Trump, it's just like boring. And then you have Richard Spencer becoming a Democrat or whatever. It's just like so weird. So weird. But yeah, I just wanted to do a video about that. And it's hard to explain like what exactly. I mean, I think it's not that hard to explain what I mean by this, but these like it's like the manosphere too, like, oh, Roosh V is so terrible and blah blah blah. And he's like not doing anything else different than any of the other guys did, really, except for like some of the stories that he told in his books were a little scary. Like Bane, Sweden, Bane, Ireland, I don't know, all those books. I mean, he was a little brash, I'll say that. Like, I think it's the way that they come across, a lot of these modern figures. It's like their material, their product is no better than the previous generation, and what they're selling. In fact, a lot of times it's worse. A lot of times it's more mediocre. I know Camila Paglia did have this infamous interview with Jordan Peterson, but like, you read her stuff and it's like very intellectually stimulating and very interesting. Read Jordan Peterson, it's just like kind of like, I tried, I'm just like, something's missing from this. It's just so weird, and it's just like, I don't know what it is, but it's just this degraded kind of culture. And it's kind of like what Matt McKinley says, like, just like the movies are mediocre, everything's mediocre, and this goes for controversial stuff too. And I'm not saying I agree with his like whole stalled century theory, even though I think it's pretty fascinating, brilliant, but it's like, it's just not interesting, Nothing's interesting like that, except for there are a few interesting people right now that are causing a ruckus, rightfully so, like Glenn Greenwald or Matt Taibbi or Michael Tracy or people like, or the Red Scare Girls, even though they're, I don't know what direction they're going in. It's pretty strange. But yeah, there are people causing a ruckus, and they, but the people that are causing the big ruckus are not interesting at all as far as what they're producing. Like, I probably would prefer Jordan Peterson's old Carl Jung books over anything else. I think they're probably pretty good, but I'm just saying, like, his books and his material are just so fucking boring. Like, I already have like 20 books in my shelf right now that surpass all the self-help stuff he talks about, or all the whatever, even gender stuff. The more edgy. I mean, I think a page of Camille Paglia's book is probably more edgy than anything he said. So I don't get it. I don't get the hype, of these culture wars. I don't get the hype. That's one thing. It's just so it's so blasé, mediocre, incompetent. A lot of stuff is incompetent too. Like the reactions are incompetent too. Like they just don't. It's like with a certain thing that's happened the last couple of years. The responses are incompetent. The people in power can't do shit about anything because they just fail. So I don't know if we're just going through this mediocre, dark age of stupidity. But anyways, that's about all.